So if you saw that video, we illustrate a point here. Cars are getting faster. It's easier to make a lot more power these days than it used to be. But tires haven't really changed a whole heck of a lot. And the road surface certainly hasn't either. And thankfully that guy's a driver and was able to save it. And everybody came out the other end okay without trading paint. But that's one of the principal reasons why we've got things like traction control available on a lot of non-factory, well, even factory to a point, ECUs now. So I wanted to illustrate this. This is probably the #1 question that I still get every time I talk about the car, talk about running somebody or something like that, is how does traction control factor into the whole thing? And so I figured I'd take a second and show you guys exactly what's going on, how it's going on, and that way you can kind of see it in play for yourself. So highlighted here a run. This is from this past weekend. Got a chance to go up against a few other cars, a few other ZR1s, and this particular run is a run where I decided to try out second gear again. Hadn't done second in a while. When it gets cold out, it's cold. Tires don't want to do their thing, and even with traction control is always going to work. The thing of it is traction control is a band-aid. Remember, it's if traction is active, that means your car is not accelerating, right? It's not doing its thing. It's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So I'm going to flip over here to the traction tab, and I'll show you guys this actually in action here. Let's see, grouping so you can a little bit easier to see. So here's what happens here. We'll go out, we set up a run, and we're out here, and decide we're going to line up. This guy wants to go, this first one was going to be from a 50. So we lined up from about 50 mile an hour. Now you're going to notice these two spots right here, that's your mile an hour. Okay, this guy right up here is non-driven wheel speed, so that's basically the front wheel speed. And driven wheel speed is going to be rear wheel speed, obviously, right? Now, this being of the non-all-wheel drive variety of Corvettes, this is the one you're going to want to look at, this top one right here, non-driven, because this is the one that's telling you kind of what the actual, it's the marker telling you how fast the car is physically going. Rear wheel speed, of course, you're going to see blips and stuff like you see right here as I highlighted this guy right here. You're going to see as soon as I roll into it here from a 50, we decided to go from. So go ahead and hit the throttle. I'm also going to set this up as a 0 time so you guys can use this as a marker. Alright, so we set our 0 time just before I hit the throttle. And see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you too. There you go. So what happens here? Hit the throttle. And you can see this green line up here. This is TPS. See this guy up here? That's TPS. So you can see me go TPS, wide open throttle right there. Okay. Matter of fact, what I'll do is I'll set this up. We'll set this up. From the time we go wide open, we'll start counting everything from the time we go wide open. It makes more sense to count it that way. Scroll over here, give it a little bit more space. Make this a little bit bigger. Alright. From the moment that I go wide open throttle, right, and the message gets to the car, to the tires, and everything, everything starts moving now. Right about here, about 0.2 of a second into the run, you can already see that the rear wheels, the front car is doing 53 mile an hour, and the rear tires have already sped up to 58. So we've got wheel spin going on. As soon as the car sees wheel spin, this red mark right here, this is an on-off marker. See this right here? So it's just basically a big square, on, off, on, off. This is actually, you can see it gets highlighted over here. So highlighted there, and it gets highlighted over here. Traction control is active. So when you've got enough rear speed deviation, okay, when the tire gets so far ahead of the front tire, traction control turns on and the car responds, in my case, in 2 ways. One, this right here. This is how much timing retard the car is actually pulling out, so that we're trying to reduce torque, of course, trying to give the rear tires a chance to catch up. In my case, not every car is set up this way, but in my case, I also utilize this guy right here. Now you'll notice that I was wide open throttle, but all of a sudden the throttle here, you see it steps down a good bit. In my case, it's a 2-phase approach to traction control. 1, roll the throttle back. 2, pull timing back. Both of these things combine and pull and limit torque here, right? Pull the throttle back, pull ignition back. You're limiting torque, you're limiting output, giving your tires a fighting chance to grab onto the road and start accelerating the car. And that's exactly what happened. So I hit the throttle, and right about here, 0.2 into the run, give or take. Yep, about 0.2 into the run, car says, wait a minute, we've got some wheel spin here. Traction control becomes active. Timing gets pulled back pretty hard. Matter of fact, it ends up netting, about 17, 18 degrees. It's yanking out here. 17 degrees of timing. So you see the car is down to about 6 degrees of total timing right here at this point in second gear as we're getting into the run. This is where I'm talking about how guys tell you that, well, you got traction control so you can win any race. You can't. If traction's active, power's down. You know what I mean? The ultimate solution is traction, mechanical traction. There's no substitute, excuse me, for having your rear tires stick to the ground and get you to move. This is a substitute. This is why when things get really cold out or kind of sloppy out for whatever other reason, if I know I'm going to be in a situation where it's not going to be nothing but TC active the whole time, the car's not going to accelerate fast. Now, I'll go straight. I won't start, wiggling around all over the place or, look like I'm having a seizure trying to hold the car straight. But it's still not going to go very fast in a straight line because, well, we're down to 6 degrees of timing at 17 pounds of boost and blah, 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 and the car's not going anywhere. But it does its job, though, because you notice that this little hump right here, that's our rear wheel speed. Now, what happens at peak here, it starts to round down, right? It starts to round down. Now, the differential between this guy and this guy starts to get narrower and narrower to the point where traction control, the computer becomes satisfied when the gap between the two is a constant. And it's within a limit. I believe my limit here is, 6 miles an hour. That's the most allowed. As it gets down to that point, ignition timing is already coming back. And when the computer's satisfied, TC down here will shut off. And it says, okay, you're good to go. Rear tires satisfied. Computer satisfied. You got traction. Now it gives me everything that I want for the rest of the gear. Now, that happens until I throw the next gear. And you're going to see the same thing happen. So as you grab the next gear, there's this momentary blip, and 7 miles an hour faster, right? The rear tire is 7 miles an hour faster as you nail the next gear. Computer sees that and says, wait a second, it's a traction event, so it does the same thing. Pulls timing back down, shuts my throttle down until it's satisfied that the two speeds are now in line, and then it gives it all back. This is how traction works. This is the reason why I can stick it in second, third, first, whatever, and it's going to go straight. It's going to go fast? Well, no, not as fast as if I had straight traction and I can get 100% acceleration 100% of the time. This is where some folks, at the track, I don't use traction control. I turn it off because it's a prep surface and I want maximum acceleration. So when guys are sitting there scratching their head questioning why it is that you can accelerate faster, on a prepped surface from first all the way up than you could on the road, well, you understand that you're not playing with the full deck here. I'm talking to people like that. Car gives you 100% here all the time. I throw fourth. There was no blip there, so it gives me 100% of the power. Don't mind this little weird spot down here, this kind of weird slant down. Having some issues with the USB card that's plugged into my ProEFI logger, and it periodically crashes as it can, and that's what you get this, for about a second long here. These weird lines that don't make sense, but but to this point it tells you what's going on here. So that's it. That's how traction works. Here's another one. This one's this was a 60 roll. Same deal, but we're starting at 60. You can see our speed right here, 63 miles an hour. So we're supposed to start at 60. Looks like he may have drugged me up a little bit. He wanted to make it a little higher, so 63. And it looks like right here we roll into it, and we're starting to speed up. And 64, 65, and you can start seeing the rear tire 67, 68, 69, 70. So the rear tire is spinning. Traction control has already become active. Ignition timing is now pulling, keeps pulling down. My throttle's down to 75%. Ignition, I pulled as much as 18 degrees out of this guy right here. In second gear at almost 18 pounds of boost. See the boost right here, and pulled quite a bit out. So I'm down a hell of a lot of power here to get the tires to stick. But you'll notice again, rear tires, the speed gets up and it comes right back down as a result of the torque limiting, and it starts coming back down. So as a response, computer's giving me timing sloping right back up here. It comes back up, and to the point where the computer's satisfied, and bam, gives it all back. Throttle's back. Now we're back. We're rolling. I'm still hazing it a little bit all the way through second. I'm about 4 or 5 mile an hour. Yeah, about 3-4 mile an hour, hazing the tires a little bit. I grabbed third. There's a little bit of a blip right there, so traction became active for a moment. Pulled a few degrees out. Pulled 12 degrees out, and pulled the throttle back for about, let's see how long here. How long do you think? About a second? I don't think it's that long. For about 3/4 of a second, I'm down to down to 75% throttle, and then it gives it back to me 100% all the way through the gears. Looks like this time I threw fourth, and there was a little bit of a momentary glitch. As far as the actual configuration goes, how fast the system responds, how fast it pulls timing, how fast it gives it back, and all that good stuff, it's all completely configurable. This is our main screen right here in ProEFI. Here's a traction control tab. Here's your setup tab. This is where you're going to tell it things like the basics that it needs. It needs gear ratios and tire sizes and stuff like that. It's going to need different inputs and stuff. As a matter of fact, you can tell that if you've got a mechanical switch or like a momentary button or like something like that to switch it on, you can set it all up here. All kinds of stuff going on there. You use lights if you want to, a little LED or something like that, so the traction's active. This right here, spark return rate and spark reduction rate. So when traction becomes active, this table right here is telling you how fast it's going to pull timing, and this table right here is telling you how fast it's going to give it back. Obviously, it's fully configurable, it's fully customizable. I'm still messing with it myself. I only started to mess with it, so I'm still playing around with it. I'm actually trying to give it back to me a little bit quicker, so I'm working on that here, but this is where everything's tailorable. The system that I use, the method rather that I use, is differential wheel speed. You see, you got other ones. You can have drive shaft speed set up. If you guys are using the Davis boxes, that's kind of similar to that. You can use front lifts for you badass, no prep drag guys with, want to use a lift as a means of pulling timing back, so keep the nose on the ground. You can use that. Ride height works in conjunction with that, with a ride height sensor at the front of the car. Comb killers, lateral control too. You set up lateral control boundaries, at which point it'll start to pull timing and keep the car straight. Throttle trim, I'm going to get to that in a second because I actually do use that. That's part of the throttle reduction. But let's go into differential wheel speed. This is where I can define how much wheel speed I want to allow. Right, this is the maximum allowed. And then at a given point, how much timing will I actually pull. So you can see here at 0 vehicle wheel speed, so basically from a stop, right, from a dig, I'll give the car as much as 25 mile-an-hour leeway. You're probably saying, well, why not 0? Why would you want any wheel speed? Well, you're going to need some wheel speed, especially from a standing start. You want a little bit of wheel speed to get the car moving. You want some wheel speed to get the car rolling, and that wheel speed is going to help accelerate the car out of the hole, out of the line. So you're going to give it a little bit there, but you're going to see how quickly the window narrows down to the point where from about, 18 mile-an-hour? Yeah, 18 and up, it's a 6-mile cushion that I give it. So I'll haze the tires a little bit for about 6 mile-an-hour. But anything beyond that, this table becomes active. And what it's saying is that anything from 6 mile-an-hour, which is this marker right here, and faster, it's going to pull this much timing. So 6 mile-an-hour, I should say, 6 mile-an-hour difference and faster, it's going to pull this much timing. So at a mile-an-hour differential of 15, so the rear tire is doing 15 mile-an-hour faster than the front tires, it's going to pull 23 degrees of timing. At 8 mile-an-hour difference, it's going to pull 17, so it's going to start pulling timing real fast, real hard down, and then the other table that I showed you is going to give it back at the same rate. So this is where you set it up. And I also do use throttle trim. I mentioned this a moment ago, and basically all this says is it's an ETC request multiplier. It's not an actual percentage to pull down from, but rather a multiplier of. So if I'm putting my foot down all the way, I'm asking for 100% throttle. This is a multiplier that says depending on how much of a differential I have, front to rear tires, it's going to multiply it against this table. So that 100% gets multiplied by, say, I don't know, let's say I'm doing 10 miles faster than I should be, right? My differential is 10 miles faster. So my rear tire is doing 110, my front tire is only doing 100. It's a 10 mile-an-hour difference. It's going to multiply my request, which is 100%, by this 0.7, which is going to pull me down to about 70% throttle. And you'll notice that most of my differential was kind of hovering at 10, 12 area, and it would reduce itself a little bit. And the percentage, my throttle percentage, you've noticed, was between 75 and 70, somewhere kind of in here. So you can see where these tables kind of all correlate. I know it's a lot of information, and believe me, this is not supposed to be a crash course on how to tune this or anything like this. I'm still figuring it out myself. The point is for you to see what it is and how it works, and the tables are all in here, customizable, controllable. I've never looked at Motec or anything like that. I'm quite sure it's the same thing, you know, maybe even better. I know Holly's is a little bit different, but yeah, this one, it's here. It definitely works. I think if you look at the tables that I showed you over here, or rather the graphs that I showed you over here, you see it definitely works. I don't know, is it still recording? Yeah, it's still recording. Yeah, it definitely works, man. It does a heck of a job. I'm very happy with how it performs, how it comes on. You know, from the moment I get on it, I can feel traction control working hard to keep the car going in a straight line. You look at this and you say, oh my God, all that time you ripped out of the car, it's going to be so slow. But it doesn't really work out like that. And I'll post those videos up here. I'll show you a couple snippets of the car hitting in second gear. Comes out pretty fast. The whole event, start to finish, from the time it came on, traction that it came on. At the longest point is how long? It's about a second and a half. So it's about a second and a half of traction control event here. Here you're probably looking at about a second's worth of traction event here. Yeah, right. 2.6 to 3.4, so less than a second here. So it comes in, does its job, and goes away. And that's really what you want traction control to do. Come in, not to be, you know, completely overbearing, not to completely, you know, take over the deal. Just come in, do your job, and get the hell out of the way. And that's what traction control's done. It does a great job. I'm very happy with it. I know there's 1,000 other systems out there that do the same thing or maybe better. That's great. God bless. I'm not a retailer. I don't sell these things. I'm just giving you input from, you know, from a user standpoint, from somebody who actually uses it. This stuff is fantastic. Works great. It does take time, like everything else. You got to sit there and really spend a lot of time, go out on the road, and this isn't really the kind of thing you can simulate on a dyno. You actually do need road time. You do need to put your tires out there the way you're going to do it on the street, and, you know, get out there and start stabbing the throttle, see what it does, and tweaking it. And when you get it all right, though, it works out pretty well. I'm real happy with it, and that's really all there is to say about that. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope it was educational. And if you have any questions, of course, hit me up in the comments. Hit up the YouTube page, or just drop me a line on Instagram or on Facebook. Thanks a lot.